Okay, Saman, sorry.
Yeah, Bhante. The lotus and the fire. This then is the brighter side of the utter allayment of papancha. Papancha. It marks the efflorescence of the personality composed of the five aggregates. The transmutation brought about through detachment is so ineffably sublime that it enables the sage to live in the world while not being of it. He is emotionally imperturbable, anejo, and intellectually incapable of being led astray, nippapancho. The data of the six senses, both pleasant and unpleasant, in the form of the eight worldly conditions, fall on him only to roll off with pearl-like grace, like the drops of water on the lotus petal or leaf, leaving the mind unsoiled. No less significant are the implications of the metaphor as to the beauty and fragrance of the flower, which can be traced neither to the mud below it, nor to the water around it, nor to the roots and leaves of the plant itself. Neither can they arise without those factors, truly an incomprehensible position which defies language and logic. But the purity, the beauty, and the fragrance of the lotus are undeniable facts of experience for those around it, as much as is the aloofness of the flower. The wisdom and compassion of the sage and his profound tranquility bear the same relation to our powers of understanding and expression. If the life
one moment. One moment, Saman. Now, these are actually a very interesting area we are covering. Now, Katugurindi Thero is explaining about an Arahant and including the Buddha. And one interesting simile given to the Buddha and the Arahants is the lotus simile. You know that as a lotus, how it is growing in the mud, and then slowly as it is coming out and go through the water, and ultimately it blossoms, not touching the water. Now it is completely rid of water and not even touching the water surface, but it is still blossoming with fragrance. Now Buddha says that he himself is like a lotus because he was arisen in this typical mundane world, which is fairly cluttered with various defilements. But he was able to completely rise from it without attached to it, without very much bound to it. Now Buddha is freed. But the beauty is still, he goes for Pindapata, he moves the others, he talks to the others, he lives with the society. So he has some connection as well. It is not that he completely discarded the world and want to go away from the world and live in a different world. Rather, he still stay in the world, still go to various occasions, and every day go to Pindapata. So likewise, so still certain amount of kind of a connection with the world is still maintained. Now, while maintaining some kind of a connection, still not being touched, not being bounded by the worldly activities, worldly phenomena, worldly attachments, and completely raised from the world is an interesting phenomena of the Buddha, and he explained it using the simile of a lotus. So the mind is completely free from defilements, is completely pure. So we can simply say he is in a supramundane level, lokuttara. So on the other hand, we can simply say he is not taking any of the aggregates as me, myself, mine. Me, mine, myself. Nothing is taken as any kind of a such deluded way. But when compared to the other worldly activities, he sometimes participates. He may go to a dana, he may go on village Pindapata, another activity. talking to someone, discussing with others, all these things are there. And that is one thing. And on the other hand, here Jnanada Thero is explaining that the data of the six senses, both pleasant and unpleasant, in the form of the 8 worldly conditions, fall on him only to roll off with pearl-like grace, like the drops of water on the lotus petal or leaf, leaving the mind unsullied. Now, this is also a very interesting phenomena. Now, it doesn't mean that the Arahant is living in the world without having any kind of a sense impingement. When he is looking at things, he can see various either agreeable or disagreeable objects. Likeable or unlikable objects are there. Beautiful or ugly objects are there. Visions are there. And he can see them. Sounds also similar. He might hear someone's praise and even someone criticize or even blame. And sometimes it may be a pleasant smell or sometimes it may be a fairly bad odor. And it may be a fairly delicious food or sometimes it may be very, harsh kind of a food. On the other hand, tangibles also similar. There may be a soft type of tangibles. At some other occasions, it may be very severe, painful kind of sensations. So likewise, the vicissitudes of the life is very much like available to him even. Sometimes the profit, sometimes the kind of a gain, sometimes a loss, sometimes praise, sometimes kind of blame or criticisms, sometimes suffering, sometimes happiness, and sometimes fame, sometimes ill fame. So these are the ups and downs of the life, 8 kinds of worldly conditions, life conditions. So Arahant also has to go through this life condition. So that is the nature. But the beauty is he is not touched by the conditions. He is not affected by the conditions. He is capable of maintaining the mind completely unsullied, completely fairly, in a way, imperturbable, and without getting to any kind of an anxiety, any kind of a depression, that kind of any issues are there in terms of the mentality. He can bear with all the worldly conditions, ups or downs, positives or negatives, doesn't matter. He can bear with all the worldly conditions. Now, this is also interestingly explained further in one of the suttas called Sona Sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya Cakkanipata. Selo yatha eka gano vatena na samirati. Evam rupa rasa saddha gandha pansacha kevala. Ittha dhamma anitthacha nappavedinti tadino. Titan chittang vipamuttang vayanchassanu passati. So Venerable Sona, after he became fully enlightened, he approached the Buddha and he explained the Dhamma as per his understanding. Now he is an Arahant. Now he is actually being guided by the Buddha. Once he was quite disappointed about the monk's life. He was about to disrobe. But the Buddha intervened and showed the path, showed the moderation. And then ultimately, Venerable Sona became an Arahant. After being an Arahant, he wanted to show the gratitude and he went to the Buddha and he is explaining some Dhamma, quite deep, indicating his deeper realization. Now the simile he is giving there also the very similar thing. Selo yatha ekagano vatena na samirati. Now he is selling a kind of a solid rock. Either it encounters any kind of a wind coming from the east direction, west direction, north direction, south direction, doesn't matter. The solid rock is unmoved, is maintaining its stability. Similarly, there may be sights, sounds, smells, tastes, tangibles. Those may be agreeable, those may be disagreeable, and those may impinge to the sense organs of the Arahant. But the beautiful thing is, he is not mixing, his mind is not mixing with any of these. His mind is not being tangled to any of these. His mind is maintained in a liberated, free state, without being tangled, without being sort of caught up, without being defiled. Rather, the mind remained completely calm, relaxed, imperturbable. And he might see how these various phenomena come and go, arise and pass away. So basically, on the other hand, we can simply say his awareness is fairly pervaded, is very much plunged into the conscious awareness, a pervaded kind of awareness, and he's being there, and he can see to this conscious environment various phenomena are coming and going. Sights, sounds, smells, tastes, tangibles, and even thoughts, mental phenomena, they arise and pass away while he being conscious. Now, so maintaining that kind of a fairly untangled, very relaxed, equanimous, unbiased, and unagitated, uninvolved, detached kind of mindset is what Buddha encouraged, and that is what many suttas actually explain, where how the practitioner is living so that the defilements are reduced further, the hindrances are abandoned, the fetters are abandoned. So likewise, so this is the path in a way. So Arahant is the one who has fulfilled the path, and now even though he is living in the world, but his mind is not tangled with the world. His mind is not spoiled by the worldly affairs, not affected by the worldly affairs, but still he lives in the world. And while being in the world, his performance or his behavior, his way of life is giving a kind of an example to the others amidst all these ups and downs, various worldly conditions, how well he's maintaining his equanimous mind in a way. A complete calmness, complete kind of equilibrium, mental equipoise. How is maintaining amidst all these ups and downs of the life? Okay, Saman, we can proceed.
Yeah, Bhante. If the life of the emancipated sage is a puzzle for us, his death is even more puzzling. What becomes of him when he passes away? Does he exist or does he not? Both conjunctively or neither disjunctively. This, as we saw earlier, was one of the problems which found expression in 4 of the 10 indeterminates, Avyakata. All the 4 Avyakata. All the 4 alternative propositions were laid aside by the Buddha, and again the scholars are in a quandary. Various interpretations of the Buddha's stand on this problem have been bandied back and forth. But the reasons for laying aside those 4 alternatives are sometimes explained in the suttas to the satisfaction of the respective interlocutors. The term Tathagata, in its wider sense of perfect man, Uttama Puriso, Parama Puriso, Paramapattipato. Paramapattipato is applicable to the Buddha as well as to the emancipated monk, Vimutta Chitto Bhikkhu. The 4 alternatives seek to categorize him in terms of existence and non-existence. We have already seen how at Anguttara Nikaya, these 4 alternatives were described as products of craving, Tanhagata, of sense perceptions, Sanyagata, of imagination, Manyita, of conceptual prolificity, Prapanchita, and of delusion, Vipattisaro. The implication, therefore, is that these 4 propositions are fallacious and misleading. The fact is clearly brought out in the Aggivaccagota Sutta. There the Buddha exposes their fallacy to Vaccagota with the help of the following simile of fire.
Yeah, one moment. Now, these are very Sometimes certain ascetics, certain paribrajakas, they approach the Buddha, even other members of the Sangha, and they sometimes ask about the death, after the death, what happens to the Buddha, what happens to the Tathagata, what happens to the Arahant. This is a very common argument that sometimes these ascetics, these Brahmins, these wanderers often ask, including the Buddha and the Sangha. And sometimes there are instances that the members of the Sangha become quite puzzled and they are unable to give a satisfactory answer. And then they come back and report the incident to the Buddha. Those occasions are also there. One instance is recorded in the canon, I can remember, it's called Venerable Anuradha. He being encountered by some other ascetics, and they simply ask, what happened to the Tathagata after death? And this Venerable is mentioning that we can't say something. And now basically he is asking, the other side is asking, is the Tathagata exists after death? And then Venerable Anuradha says, we can't say so. And is it does not exist after death? Then again he simply say he can't say so. He exists and non-exist after death? Again we can't say so. And no exist, no not exist. So this is the Kadrulemma. Chatukkotika Takka. So the Kadrulemma is the way that those ascetics are trying to figure out what's happening after the death of the Tathagata, death of the Arahant. And this Venerable Anuradha simply said, so his state is completely beyond these four states. His states, by the way, he basically like admitting there's an existence of the Tathagata, but he simply says, okay, his existence is beyond these four propositions. But then they actually made a ridicule of this Venerable. They simply said that you may be a newcomer to the Sasana, you might know about these things, and they simply ignored him and they went back. Then actually this Venerable reported the incident to the Buddha, and Buddha particularly mentioned, even at the present, there is no a so-called Tathagata. There is no a person called Tathagata. Even though simply one can simply say, okay, here is the Buddha, here is the Gautama Buddha, I paid homage to the Buddha, I have offered dana to the Buddha. So likewise people may be referring, but for the Buddha, he is not identified with the body, he is not identifying with the feelings, he is not identified with perceptions, he is not identified with various thoughts, formations, mental formations, and he is not identified with any of the conscious activity. So that's the interesting thing. Even though we can see and hear and everything, but for the Buddha, he is not operating with the mundane state of being a person. So his state is very much like very difficult to explain, and we come across how Buddha himself want to explain the situation of an Arahant, and we are unable to kind of comprehend from the mundane terminology, from the typical mundane terminology, language. It's quite difficult to understand this Arahant's state. Okay, Saman, we can proceed.
Yeah, but what do you think about this, Vacha? If a fire were blazing in front of you, would you know this fire is blazing in front of me? Good Gautama, if a fire were blazing in front of me, I should know this fire is blazing in front of me. But if, Vacha, someone were to question you thus, this fire that is blazing in front of you, what is the reason that this is blazing? What would you, Vacha, reply when questioned thus? If, good Gautama, someone were to question me thus, this fire is blazing, I, good Gautama, on being questioned thus, would reply thus. This fire is blazing in front of me. This fire is blazing because of a supply of grass and sticks. If that fire was in front of you, Vacha, were to be quenched, would you know this fire that was in front of me has been quenched? If, good Gautama, that the fire that was in front of me were to be quenched, I would know this fire has been quenched. But if someone were to question you thus, Watcher, that fire was in front of you that has been quenched, to which direction has that fire gone from here? To the east, or west, or north, or south? Or being questioned thus, what would you Watcher reply? It does not apply, good Gautama. For good Gautama, that fire blazed because of a supply of grass and sticks. Yet, from having totally consumed this, and from the lack of other fuel, being without the fuel, it is reckoned to be quenched. Nibbuto tveva
Nibbuto tveva sankham gacchati.
Nibbuto teva sankham gacchati. Watcher is made to admit the fact that the attempt to locate a fire that has gone out is a ludicrous category mistake caused by the enslavement to linguistic conventions. Fire, as of the most volatile of elements, provide a homely illustration of the fact of dependent arising and cessation. When Watcher had grasped this fact, the Buddha brings in the analogy of the Tathagata. Evameva ko Watcha yena rupena Tathagatang Panyapayamano Panyapeya Tang Rupang Tathagatassa Pahinang Uchinna Mulang Talavattu Katang
No, Talavattu Katang.
Talavattu Katang Anabhava Katang
Yeah.
Ayating Anupada Dhammang Rupa Sankha Vimukto Ko Vaccha Tathagato Gambhiro Appameyo Yupparyogaho Seyatapi Mahasamuddo Uppajjatiti na upeti na uppajjatiti na upeti uppajjati cha nacha uppajjatitipi tipi na upeti neva uppajjati na nupajjatitipi na upeti yaya vedanaya yaya sanyaya yehi sankarehi yena viññānena na upetiti. Even so, Vacha, that material shape by which one designating the Tathagata might designate him, the material shape has been got rid of by the Tathagata, cut off at the root, made like unto a palm tree stump, that can come to no further existence and is not liable to arise again in the future. Freed from the concept of material shape is the Tathagata. Vacha, he is deep, immeasurable, unfathomable, as is the great ocean. Arises does not apply. Does not arise does not apply. Both arises and does not arise does not apply. Neither arises nor does not arise does not apply. That feeling, that perception, those preparations, that consciousness does not apply. The Buddha points out that a Tathagata has already got rid of each of the 5 aggregates of attachment, whereby one might speak of a Tathagata in the strict sense of the term. He is thus released from the concept sankha of the form, of feelings, of perceptions, of preparations, and of consciousness. The egoistic clinging which justifies those concepts is extinct in him. Since the Tathagata no longer identifies himself with any of those aggregates, to speak of a Tathagata's rebirth would be as meaningless as the attempt to locate the fire that has gone out, released from its fuel.
Yeah, one moment. Now, this is a very, very profound simile and very popular simile that Buddha explained to explain us, to show us the state of the Arahant. So basically the interesting point he highlights is that how fuel is required to continue the fire. So we continuously have to supply fuel, then only the fire will be continued. And when the fuel is stopped, abandoned, ceased, then the fire also ceased, fire also extinguished because the fuel is not available. Now, if someone is asking the question, so when the fuel is not supplied, once the fire is extinguished, where the flame has gone? So that is not a valid question. So that is what Buddha points out here. So Buddha asked this question from Vacha, and Vacha himself is now admitting, okay, that is not a valid question. If someone is asking where the flame has gone, we can't say it has gone to the east, west, north, south, and that question is a meaningless question. One can only say there were fuel. That fuel was the one helped to continue the fire. But once the fuel is not available, that fire is extinguished. That's it. So similarly, Buddha mentioned, now the worldling is continuing his kind of sansaric journey because of the fuel. We can simply say the fuel is tanha. Avidya and tanha, we can say, the defilements in a way. So the ignorance and the craving. So they are the main fuel, we can say. So keep continuously supplying these necessary fuel. So the clinging is continued. As a result of that, the continuity of the sansaric journey happens. One existing here and then after passing away, again a rebirth at another level. And again, there also he is accumulating, he is behaving as a person and craving and all that are there. That also further develops the potential to further continue. So likewise, it's a kind of an endless journey in the samsara. So what happened? The fuel is not provided. What happened when the defilements are not supplied? What happened when the upadana is not available? So interestingly, upadana, the term, has two meanings. So in one sense, that is the grasping. And then the other sense, upadana is a term for the fuel. So there's a very beautiful meaning there. The term upadana is being used to indicate fuel as well as the clinging in Pali. Now, so once the upadana is not there, clinging is not there, then the birth, decay, all that various diseases and all the different dukkha, states of dukkha are not going to happen. The parisampada, that those results not going to happen because there is no upadana, there is no any grasping. Without grasping, there can't be existence. The mind can't sort of shift from its pre-normal position and get a excited state. If there is no upadana, that won't happen because upadana pacca bhava. The state of bhava can't happen if the upadana is not there. So when the arahant is considered, so his upadana is completely abandoned. There is no upadana. As a result of that, there is no continuation of the rebirth. And again, therefore, we can't simply say at the end of the body, after the death, he became a deva, he became a god, he became a brahma. So we can't say something like that. It does not apply there. Because the continuity happened because of basically the upadana, the clinging, the continuous supplying of the defilements, fetters, but now nothing is there. All that supply is cut off. Completely the asavas are abandoned. Now this would be the last birth of the arahant. Okay, I think we have reached a good point here, and it's also time's up for the next part. So I probably will keep a note here, and we'll now switch to the Dhamma discussion. If you have any question related to your meditation, or if you have any question related to this Dhamma sermon. So please feel free to ask that question. And Chamila is ready to present the questions.
Awesome, Swaminathan.
Yeah.
We have 4 questions today.
Right.
Question number 1. This is a general question. Dear Bhante, are there signs or indicators to check if self-view, Sakkaya Ditthi, of a mindfulness practitioner is reducing? Much merits for your guidance with metta. That's the end of the question.
Yes, definitely. So there should be many indicators that to verify whether those are very much like reducing. And you can refer even the Kosambhiya Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, which explain about 7 contemplations to verify whether one has become a Sotapanna. Probably you are asking about a Sotapanna without giving that name, only referring Sakkaya Ditthi. But in general, with respect to a Sotapanna, Buddha mentioned there are 7 kind of verifications, reflections one can do. And it has to be a very honest, reasonable reflection. And one has to put it to oneself. And then one can recognize whether those sublime qualities, those capacities, those characteristics are very much like endowed into one's mind. Now, I would say a couple of things coming from those 7 contemplations. So one thing indicated there is about the view, the correct view. So we related to the correct view, because sometimes we don't know whether we are in the correct track, our path is correct, whether I'm in the proper path. So these kinds of doubts can be there. But when one becomes a Sotapanna, Buddha mentioned one is quite sure one is leading towards the proper path. And the view, the correct view, the right view, he is being sort of guided again and again, further and further, leading him towards a further calmness, further tranquility, untanglement. So those kind of very relaxed furthering of the qualities are there. So therefore he decides, okay, my right view is correct. My proper view is, the proper samadhi is very much established. So the way of my path is quite clear, quite correct. Something like that. So that may be a very good indicator where he get the confirmation that the way of practice, maybe even the meditation method and the way of practice, way of his sila, all are very much like aligned, and everything is leading towards fair amount of tranquility, untanglement, relaxation, non-grasping, freedom, etc. So, on the other hand, practical sense, but these are not something explained as rules, but we can inferentially take from certain suttas, because typically when Sakkaya Ditthi is strong, so people tend to take things so personally. So whenever they become sick, so their mind is further sick. Now say for example, you got a cancer, you got some kind of an ailment. So your mind is so depressed about it, worried about it, talking about it, thinking too much about it. So apart from the bodily sickness, now one is having very strong mental kind of depressed state as well. Because one has taken the body very strongly, grasped the body very strongly. So whatever the consequences that the body has to go through is something that you are unable to understand. Your too much egoistic grasping is very strong. And sometimes there may be painful feelings that also cause you quite suffering, unable to detach from them. And the various perceptions are also there. So your views, your education, everything help to prepare a self, conceited, egoistically grasping all that. And the mind also something too much thinking and proliferating. So likewise, according to Dhamma, Now, all that, because of the too much grasping, leads to time to time sorrow, time to time lamentation, time to time some sort of a suffering. You can refer Atta Deepa Sutta. In the Kanda Samyutta, in the Atta Deepa Sutta, Buddha mentioned, because when someone is, this uninstructed worlding is attached to the five aggregates, basically, he is going to a certain amount of suffering. Because all the aggregates are grasped, unfortunately, aggregates are subject to change, so this fellow can't bear it. So he suffers. He even curse, he even lament, even worry, even cry, all that are there. On the other hand, when the instructed person, the Sekapuggala, the trainee, who is properly training the qualities, his body, his feelings are also changing. It is not that his body is not getting any kind of a sickness or any kind of disease. Rather, his body also go through this all the typical situations. He's also getting old, but he mentally does not go through any kind of a despair because he understood. He's not grasping the body as me, myself. So therefore, his mind is free from sorrow, free from crying, free from lamentation, free from depression, because he is not taking the body, any kind of physical object, any feelings, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness. Nothing is taken as me, myself. So basically, the result is he can live harmoniously. He can live peacefully amidst all these changes happening. So therefore, you can see within you when these ups and downs of the life is happening, when something is happening to the body, when someone is insulting, are you still feeling very strong ego? Are you feeling very strong hurt, inner hurt? So that indicates that we still have certain fair amount of maybe grasping, maybe personality view. We still take something as myself. I think that so as we practice, so that kind of a grasping has to reduce. Back
Thank
to
you,
you,
Bhante.
Chami.
Yes.
Yeah.
Question number 2 of 4. This is also a general question. Dear Venerable Sir, we can observe different aggregates coming and passing away, example, feelings, perceptions, etc. Can or should we try to observe multiple of them in action together? Is there a possibility that one observes all 5 aggregates arising and passing away at once? Appreciate your explanations on how we can do this in practice. With metta, that is the end of the question.
Yeah, typically we can pay attention one at a time and can look at how they are rising and passing away. But when one may reach some stage, typically we call it as choiceless awareness. So various phenomena are there, but you are not particularly paying attention to anything specifically. You are not paying any specific attention to anything, but everything is rising, passing away. Everything is arising, passing away. That may be sounds coming and going, sights coming and going, thoughts coming and going, feeling coming and going. All these different things are coming and going, but you stay in the middle, something like that. So that also may something sometimes yogis are referring. So everything is there, but you are not grasping anything. So that is also possible.
Question number 3 of 4. This is on mindful walking. Dear Bhante, during walking, I focus on the sole of my foot and I can observe various sensations and the difference between the left and right foot. After 5 to 10 rounds, these sensations fade away and my mind starts to drift to thoughts and observations. Drift to thoughts and observation of thoughts. My mind starts to drift to thoughts and observation of thoughts beginning, how they emerge and mind move away from walking, and how the focus comes back naturally to the walking again. I can feel a drifting power and pulling back power, push and pull. Seems like there is no issue with either push or pull, and seems I am in the middle passively. I can literally feel the magnitude of push to go out of walking process and the pull to come back to the walking again. This happens many cycles, but mine seems to be calm and composed. I don't know if this is good or bad for the practice, but this is the situation of my walking practice at the moment. Much merits for your teachings, Bhante. That's the end of the question.
Yeah, this is no problem because you know that either you practice Kaya Anupasana, either you practice Vedana Anupasana, either you practice Chitta Anupasana, still within the Satipatthana. We are in the Satipatthana framework. So that is our guideline, that is our posture, that is our refuge. So while you are walking, if you are paying attention to various bodily phenomena, various element characteristics, various feelings, and that is the typical approach what we take. But as you are growing, naturally there may be a tendency to look at the mind, and you can do all within one session even sometimes. And say if the mind is naturally handling it, naturally growing like that, naturally navigating to various areas while you are maintaining fairly good calmness, relaxation, mindfulness, etc. That's no harm. You can continue like that.
Question number 4 of 4. This is on mindful sitting. Dear Venerable Bhante, I start my daily meditation with metta for first 5 minutes and then move to Anapanasati. Karmasthana is abdominal rising and falling. From last few months, during the metta meditation, I start to feel a strong sensation inside my mouth. But without paying to that, I do my metta meditation until finish. After that, I pay my attention to the sensation inside my mouth. Meanwhile, bodily sensations spread around the different parts of the body as cold, heat, etc. But sensation inside the mouth is never fading away. Most of the days it remains until ringing the 1-hour bell. My question is, recent continuous tingling sensation inside my mouth doesn't allow me to pay attention to my thoughts. Do I need to wait until the sensations fade away to pay attention to thoughts? Even during walking practice, these tingling sensations happen, and I come to sit with this. Appreciate your advice. That's the end of the question.
Yeah, if it is the main focus and it is the one catching your attention, probably we can continue like that because maybe later mind will naturally withdraw from it. So, but I feel at this stage, forcefully taking the attention from that might not be useful. So you can take advantage of this. So whenever there is nothing particularly available for you to investigate, so this can become a phenomena, an ongoing involuntary process is available every time for you to develop the wisdom. Because this is also a process, this is also a changing process. You can see how things are coming and going, how things are rising, passing away, disintegrating. Everything you can experience using this, whatever the sensations happening in the mouth. And it can be used even as a Mula Kamatahana. Maybe later, once the mind has grown to a certain extent, so these things can become very much like blurred, distant, and then the mind can rest. Something like that may be possible. I feel for the time being, you don't need to ignore it. You can make use of it.
So, answer that is the end of the written questions. We have about 15 minutes. Should we open the session or?
Sure. Yeah, can.
Okay. If there's anyone who has any questions to ask, they can raise their hands on Zoom, and I will unmute them.
Everybody fully understood, so nothing to worry.
Probably because it's the first day after a long break. Yeah.
And the other thing is, next week I am unable to conduct it as the Chitta Vivekashrama program is scheduled on 18th,
Okay.
so I won't be able to conduct the session. Yeah.
We will do a practice session next week.
Yeah.
So if there are no questions, we can.
Yeah. And just as a notice, I can inform you that the last Perth retreat was conducted in English, and now it is available in our website as well as the YouTube channel. If any one of you are interested, you can hear it. And there we try to cover identification and non-identification, tammyata and atammyata, one of the very interesting teaching by the Buddha. Often it is not paid enough attention, but as practitioners, that's a very interesting area for us to explore. And probably if you are interested, you can hear the Dhamma sermons and even the Q&A if you like.
I shared earlier the link on the Nissarana website to Overseas Retreats page, but I will share it again before we end the program, so you can look at that.
And again, the YouTube channel also available, Chamila.
Okay.
So, and once you reach the YouTube channel page from our website, there is something called Overseas Retreats, then you can locate easily where it is.
Okay, sorry. I will share the link as well for that.
Right.
So if you can, if everyone can stay a minute after we finish, I will share it in the chat window so you can copy the link. So to end the program today, first I'd like to pass our merits and thank Bhante for his valuable time, even with the busy schedule at the monastery. To all the supporters of this program, both seen and unseen, and to the participants for joining today to practice and share their questions. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thero Saranai.
Thero Saranai.